Hi, I'm Dana, and today's video is a little bit different because I've never done a reaction video before, but I found this video called Having Autism Spectrum Disorder in Japan. But it just really struck my interest because I've thought a few times, like for autistic people like myself, is it easier or harder living in a cultural society where there's a lot more rules? Like, obviously there's like unspoken rules in every culture and society. We definitely have it in the UK with like queues and stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've missed where the end of the queue hasn't been told off. But you know, like, to a complete outsider, a total foreigner, I haven't got a clue, I'm not smart. Japan seems like a place that's got very structured, rigid rules socially, and I always think, like, would I find that loads easier if I'd grown up with it? Would I find it much easier to live in that kind of place where I don't have to figure it out myself? I don't have to figure out what I'm doing. I just have to know what I'm supposed to do. Or would it be much harder because I'm meant to know what I'm meant to do, but I don't? And I feel like with Japanese culture, from what I'm aware of it, they'd take it a lot more seriously if I fucked up than we do in the UK. So yeah, clearly I have a few thoughts and opinions, but I really don't know much about it, which is why the video picked my interest so much. I think it's going to be very interesting, and that means that I only watched the first 10 seconds before I paused it and added it to my watch later so that we could watch it together. It's fun. So I'm gonna do some tech stuff that I have no idea how to do so that you can also see the video and I can pause it and be a real reaction YouTuber like I've watched so many times. I'll mostly let it play, I think, and then just stop it to tell you what I think.
ASD を持つ者としては日本で住むことが不可能のように思える。とてもハイコンテキストなカルチャーで空気を読むことが求められる国において ASD の人がどのように生きているのか気になります。そこで今回は ASD を持つ方に日本での経験について伺っていきたいと思います。日本ではどういう感じなのかが少しでもわかれば幸いです。
よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございます。こちらこそお声掛けいただいてありがとうございます。
I really like that they've found a woman for it, because obviously women are so often left out of the conversation about autism anyway, and I just really like that. I really like that. But the thing that made me actually want to watch this video and do a whole reaction is because obviously that little bit at the first part where it tells you about the message that someone sent in, very much the opposite of what I was thinking, in that there's quite structured rules, so it should, I think, for some people be fairly easy. But again, I'm not that educated, so let's am I pausing this too much? I'm sorry, I hope I'm not one of those annoying reactors.
精神障害いくつか書いてあって、はい、それがちょっとどういうものなのかいいですか、説明していただいて。生まれつき結構変な子とか言われるっていうか、自分でもちょっとずれてるなと思う部分があって、当たり前の生活をこなしていくことに不安があったんですけど、それが結構学校に行けないとかいう問題になってきて、高校に入ってからさすがにまずいと思って、心療内科にかかりまして、そこで17歳の時一番最初に診断されたのが双極性障害の2型、いわゆるうつ病、何もできない、やりたくない、あとすごく不安になる、眠れないのうつ状態と、逆に何でもできる気がするような、考えもポジティブになってっていう時期を極端に繰り返す、バリバリ働けていたのが急に1週間とか休んでしまったりとかするので、社会生活に支障が出る。
I think it's also really interesting that they found someone who has more than just one neurodivergency. You know, it would have been incredibly easy for them to just find the first autistic fella they could. And instead they found an autistic woman that's also bipolar. That's good on you for actually getting the diversity and getting someone that will be able to give a different point of view than just the average person. I like that.
型っていうのは、上がる度合いがそこまで高くないと言われていて、気づかれにくいとは言われています。22歳ぐらいの時だと思うんですけど、診断されたのが、今 ASD って言われることが多いんですけど、空気が読めないとか、思ったことそのまま口に出してしまって角が立つとか、本当に悪意なくやってしまう。 ASD でこだわりが強いっていう特性がよく。
I feel like it's also interesting that they've gotten her in specific because so many women are misdiagnosed with things like bipolar and BPD before finding out that they're actually autistic. But I think it's really good and healthy and necessary to keep in mind that people can also be bipolar or have BPD and be autistic, as this lady is and as many other people are. But that can so often be drowned out. I really like that they've made a video that's got, you know, like almost 500,000 views, and they're very clearly saying like, yeah, she's bipolar and autistic. It's not, oh, she was bipolar but then she like figured out she's actually autistic or any of that bull crap. You know, even though that does happen, it's valid if that's the journey you've been on. I think it's really good that they found someone like her.
ちょっと頑張ればできるならやってしまおうと思って、すごく頑張れる状態で、そこで頑張ってしまうと当然体力も疲れてきますし、で、うつ状態にドーンってなってしまうっていうことがあるので、なかなか良くなっていかないなって部分はありますね。はい。そうですね。二次障害って言われていて、発達障害がもともとあって、双極性障害とかの引き金になって発症するっていうことはよくある話ですね。
I know this bit's sort of just about mental health and we haven't gotten to the actual like living with autism in Japan, but I didn't love the way she included bipolar in the secondary courses from autism kind of thing, because at least for me, I think that my food issues and my anxiety are massively tied into the experience as I've been through as an autistic person. You know, I don't think I would have those issues were I not autistic. However, she'd be bipolar if she wasn't autistic. That's a completely different thing. That's not been caused by you being autistic. That's your brain. Like, you know, didn't love that.
子供の頃は何でも言ってたんですね。気を使うっていうことをやっぱ覚えてなかったので、だからっていうのもあるんですけど、喧嘩はちょくちょくありましたし、高校生ぐらいからちょっとその空気みたいなものを読まなきゃって感じるようになって、そしたらほとんど喋らないようにしてましたね。自分の内面のことを言わないってしていたら、薄い浅い関係になってしまうっていう状態になりましたね。過剰に。
That was big for me as well, realising that you're doing stuff wrong and you're not being like everyone else, so you just stop trying. You just go really quiet and sort of isolate and like really access your inner world rather than interacting with other people, because I'm doing it wrong every time, so why carry on doing it? And I think it's always really interesting to see that even with like vastly different cultures and in people with different races and different genders and so on and so forth, we so often as human beings have the exact same experiences. And it's, you know, it's weird. It's a little odd that like someone so far away in such a different place can have the exact same experience. But it's also like, I find it kind of heartwarming that, you know, at the end of the day, people are like, we're all the same. We're all the same. There's no need to be horrible to each other and fuck about and whatever else. But back to the video.
科目だったと思います。よくコンピューターって言われてましたね。機械みたいとか感情がないんじゃないか。いじめとか攻撃の対象にはならなくても気を使って関わらないとか、あんまり刺激しないようにってなることはあると思いますね。高校生の時に結構半年ぐらい学校を長く休んで戻ったんですけど、卒業するためにより希薄になりましたね。すごく気を使わせてしまってるな。そういうのもあるとやっぱ打ち明けづらいとか、隠さなきゃいけないとか、隠した方がうまくいくんじゃないかっていう風になるのは、まあそうなりますよね。年を重ねるにつれて話の仕方みたいなのを感覚じゃなくて理屈で理解していって、よほど親しくならなければある程度の人間関係は構築したりできるようになってきたんですけど、そこからもう一歩踏み込んだ関係ってなるとやっぱ難しい部分はありますね。
And again, an interesting difference between autistic people is that we are all different, which means that although she's fine with having like a brief, what did I do to my hair then? So as she said, she's fine with having like a brief conversation with a coworker, a little bit of small talk. I hate that more than anything. I hate it. I'm much more comfortable having like deep, in-depth, like spiritual fucking, you know, like I was gonna say Cosmic Scouser, but if you're not from Liverpool, you don't know about Cosmic Scouser. But like the very in-depth conversations about like life and we're all the same and we all want the same things and like here's what's happened to me and you can share, like, you know, those types of conversations. I know what to do. I'm a quite emotional person. I can do that. Talking to colleagues and having to keep it to like, oh, it was raining on Saturday, so I went to the pub. What did you do? I'm not good at that.
そんなに経験が豊富なわけではないんですけど、すごく一方的に依存してしまった時もありますし、相手からの行為を素直に受け入れられなくて、存在に接してしまったこともあったり、お互いにとって辛いんじゃないかなと思います。悪意はないのでどちらにも。相手の方にちゃんと理解してもらうっていうのが結構難しいんですかね。まあ、あまり理解最悪されなくてもいいとは思ってるんですけど、合理的になんか分かるように説明しようとはしますね。分かってくれる方もいらっしゃいます。ただ、その感情で受け入れられないっていう人は、どういう伝え方をしても一方通行にしかならない。
I have a lot of opinions when people say that autistic people are sort of too close or too dependent on people, because I think for a lot of us, we're not able to depend on people, you know? A lot of us, we've experienced being gaslit, we've experienced abandonment, we've experienced people pretending to be our friends when they actually just want something from us, and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's all that odd or unhealthy that when we find someone who isn't shitty to us and that we enjoy being around and who actually supports us, I think it's pretty standard and healthy and okay that we would want to be around that person a bit more and we would need them a little bit more than perhaps a neurotypical person would. You know, like, it can definitely become a place of codependency where it is unhealthy, but I think that, like, personally, I definitely need the people that I have a little bit more than a neurotypical person might need them. And, you know, there's some areas where I could definitely improve it to be healthier. I think it's important to consider relationships and consider what's healthy and what isn't and keep updating things and ensuring that you're staying healthy. But I think that it's pretty standard that we do need people a little bit more. We do need that extra bit of support and love and guidance, and acceptance is a big one. And, you know, I think that's what she's going into here now, really, is that no matter how much you explain to someone, if they're not you or the same as you, then they're not gonna understand entirely. So it does need to be acceptance if they're not going to understand.
っていうことあります。偏見というか、誤解みたいなのやっぱあんまり知られてないんだなっていうのは思いますね。発達障害っていう言葉はすごくだいぶ普及広まったと思うんですけど、詳しくは知らないっていう方が多いんじゃないかなと。発達障害の中にも ASD とか ADHD とか区別がわからない人の方が圧倒的に多いと思いますね。あとは多くの人ができることが苦手だったりするけれど、その代わりにものすごくなんか秀でた能力があるとか、ちょっと知識がある人だとそっちをすごく期待してくれたりするんですね。そうでもないっていうのがありまして、その期待をされると答えられる自信がちょっとないなって思ったりは。
So as she's saying that, it sounds very similar to the UK, really. Although I think that from what she said, there is more awareness. From what she said, I think there is more awareness here of autism as like a thing, and ADHD and other neurodivergencies. I think people are more aware of the words, but I think they have, like, from what she said, a very similar understanding of what it actually is. You know, there's many people that I've told I'm autistic and they're like, do you need some help to go somewhere? You know, a lot of people assume that I'm going to be very non-verbal, I'm going to be very childlike and blah, 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 blah. You know, and then there's the other side where a lot of people assume because I have quite low support needs, I'm gonna be a math whiz, or they can ask me what date it was on Friday the 17th of March, or I don't know. You know, they think they can, like, ask me something, I'll be a whiz at something, I'm not. Like what she said. You know, there's a good amount of nuance towards each situation and it varies from country to country. But I think on the whole, things are fairly similar through the world when it comes to autism. You know, like, I mean, when it comes to, like, the general public understanding, of course, when it comes to actually getting a diagnosis and approaching stigma and so on and so forth, there's a hell of a lot more to it that I'm not qualified to talk to and not going into in this video.
日本では精神疾患のことをオープンに話しやすくなってきているというふうに感じますか？
いやー、まだまだだと思います。人によってはもちろん一生のお付き合いになる病気なんですけど、日本では治らないとか、精神疾患を持っていると怖いとか、そういう偏見はあると思います。
家族や恋人に精神疾患を持つ方がいる方、どういうふうに対応したらいいかわからないという方もいると思うんですよね。そういう人たちにはどういうアドバイスを送りますかね？
病気はその人の中の一部であって、病気がその人のそのものではないので、病気であっても病気じゃなくても変わらない対応というかですね、ASD の方でも ASD っていう診断はついてるけど、困ってることとか特性も違いますし、一括りにするのは危険だなっていうふうに思います。
理解しようとして本を読んだ。
Honestly, she had a better approach than most medical professionals I've spoken to in the UK. I think that there can be an issue in that, you know, so many people like to say, like she did, being all like, oh, don't, you know, treat everyone differently, understand that they're different, but you don't need to treat them with special or like sensitivity, you don't need to treat them like they're special. And, you know, I agree, I don't need to be treated like I'm special, but especially when it comes to children and younger people that are autistic, they need accommodations, you know? And a lot of the time when children and teens and young adults and anyone that's disabled ask for the accommodations that they need, it is seen as special treatment. They're getting special treatment when it's not. It's what they need to be on par with everyone else. And I think that telling people and putting out the message of like, don't treat them specially, don't give them special treatment, you know, it encourages parents to treat their autistic kids the exact same as any other kid, which in some ways is great and should be done, and in other ways, like, you need to accommodate to your autistic child. So, you know, we're going through subtitles as well, so the translation might not be flawless for what they're saying, so I don't want to like really nitpick at it, but I do think that there needs to be more talk about accommodations being acceptable.
とかする方がいらっしゃるんですけど、それももちろんすごく前向きないいことだと思うんですけど、でもその本に書いてある通りに接したらじゃあうまくいくのかって言われたらそうではない部分があるので、本で入れた知識を解釈してその人と関係をどう作るかっていうことに結局なっていくと、私はなんですけど ASD でできればこうしてもらえると助かるっていうのは、話をするターンと聞くターンをきちっと分けて話せるとやりやすいで伝えやすいです。一通り聞いてから自分の意見を言うっていう風にした方が会話としてうまくいくんじゃないかと。そうですね。でもそんなに気を使っていただかなくても大丈夫な部分もありますね。割とよく曖昧なところがあると ASD の人とかは特に理解が難しかったりするので、そこを気をつけましょうっていうのがよくあると思うんですけど、私は曖昧で分からなかったら
I mean, she's braver than me if she is just asking them to make it clear. But I like the point she's making as well, because by the point that, you know, she's 29, I'm 25. By this point in life, we've had to get through life. If we were going through with absolutely no idea of being able to read the room, or they're saying read the air in the subtitles, but I assume they mean like read the room, you know, it's very, very difficult for me. I'm not good at it. But you don't get very far in life without learning some parts, you know? It's much more like she said, things like making sure she knows when it's her turn to speak. That would really help me out too. Just allowing people allowing autistic people the room to be themselves without pushing so many social boundaries on them, and while also allowing them space, I think is a big one for me. I like to be, not even physically, but like just giving the space to like, it's your turn to talk. You know, people not looking at me while I'm speaking has always been a big one for me. Like when I've had other neurodivergent friends that don't make eye contact and they just automatically don't look at each other while we speak, things like that. Those are the things that are actually helpful. And, you know, it'd be nice if you could just leave it to us to let you know if it's not, but also I wouldn't really be very good at that myself. You know, and I also think that this video is really good for neurotypicals to be watching as well, because so much of what she says is for me, like mine. You know, it's very much about her and her autism. She's not saying this is how people are, this is how autistic people behave, this is what autistic people want. I feel like she's given a very nice rundown of what life's like for her, and as an autistic person in Japan. I'm quite impressed with it so far. We've not got an awful long time left. So
全部逐一聞きます。こちら側からの対応っていうのもするので、そこまで構えて気を使っていただかなくても大丈夫な部分はあります。理解してもらおうとか自分のことを知ってもらおうだけではなくて、逆に他人を理解しようとかってすることで周りの価値観取り入れられるので、あとはそこのズレ、自分とのズレを調整すればすれ違いとかは少なくなっていくんじゃないかと思って。
I'm not sure if it's a cultural difference or just a difference between me and her, but I do think that to like some degree, I do kind of expect people to help me make it a little easier. You know? Like, not constantly, not all the time, but I don't feel like it should all be on me if, like, the conversation's taking an awkward turn. It's not all on me as an autistic person. You let it get awkward too, my good pal, my jolly old friend. You know, that's probably something for me to unpack in my own time. But I do wonder if there's more of a cultural difference of, you know, she feels that it's her responsibility to control how other people perceive her and control her own boundaries and the like, and I so much am more like, I'll just deal with it. I think that there's definitely a degree of like British politeness that I've never quite kicked, essentially. And this bit too, I can't recognise the gap. That's my thing. I can't recognise the gap and then can't adjust it.
最近はなるべく逆にあえて人と関わって人の価値観を取り入れるっていうのをしていますね。
動画YouTube チャンネル拝見したんですけど、いろんな
ありがとうございます。
ことテーマで話されていると、発達障害
はい。
と話そうと思ったきっかけ。
Oh, I love her. She's so cute. She's so sweet. That little last bit really touched me. Oh, bless her. It's so weird to me that there's someone in Japan that's also making little YouTube videos like this about autism in Japan. That's for the same reasons that I started as well, more or less. You know, it is a lot more widely known and talked about here in the UK, but I still feel like there's a lot that needs to be said and a lot that I can do to hopefully try and help autistic people and help educate people and so on and so forth, which is what she's also trying to do. And it's so weird that despite living in such different places that are so far away from each other, we've done the same thing. She seems a lot more successful at it than I am, but like, okay. So yeah, that's the end of that. I won't lie to you, I did hope it'd be a bit more about the job environment and like family and the like. I don't feel like I entirely got what I wanted from that video. I definitely wanted, because from what I've heard, there's a very, is it hustle culture, is that the right term? From what I'm aware of, which is not much because I'm not clever, I've said this, Japan's got quite a, you know, constantly turned on workforce. I'm sure it was Japan that I saw something about having like a 1 day weekend that's like literally like an 8-hour break before they go back to work and stuff. And as an autistic person, I really really struggle with jobs anyway. And I would have liked to see more about what the workforce is like for autistic people in Japan. I'd have liked to hear more about what she does for work if it's not YouTube videos. I'd have liked to hear more about her family life, because from my understanding, obviously in Japan, a lot of families are much closer because you have more of a relationship with your parents where they look after you and then you go off and live your life for a bit and then you look after them. And there's a lot more family gatherings and family celebrations and stuff. But, you know, I think I'm asking them to make a full, like, feature-length documentary, whereas this is just a 10-minute video to give people a sort of bit of an overview, which I feel like it does well. I feel like it does it really well. You know, I think maybe I wanted more, because I was just expecting her to have had a much different experience of life and being autistic in the world than I have, when the reality of it is that it's very similar. I think also, not to shade on the guy doing the interview because he was great, but I think I'd have liked to see a Westerner do it, purely because I feel like so much of the stuff I'm curious about, they won't be, just because it's a normal part of their everyday culture. It's how they grow up, it's how they live, it's completely ordinary, normal life to them. Whereas to me, as an outsider, as a foreigner, I'm like, well, what about that? What about that? What about this? What about this? And yeah, I've got questions. I'd like to hear a bit more, but on the whole, I think that's actually a really nice, good, educational little video. I think it'd be a good 10-minute video for, like, any holistic person to watch. I think they found someone who has a very good insight into who they are as a person and what they need as an autistic person. I think she was really on it for that. I'd have liked to hear more about her job still. I'd have liked to hear more about the Japanese, like, work environments. Even the home environment when living with other people, because obviously she will have grown up with a family, I assume. I'd have liked to hear more about what it's like to grow up in a Japanese family when you're autistic. Are there different expectations from your parents? You know, there's just more I want to know. But I think that's probably a good thing, because now I'm going to go and have a look through this channel and see what's on there. So that's probably what they were going for. I'll link the video below if you want to give it a watch on your own. If you're new here, if this is your first time watching me, it'd be lovely if you wanted to subscribe. You don't have to. If you didn't like the video, you may as well not bother. But if you did like the video, you can give it a physical little, do we call them thumbs up? Are they just likes now? But you can do that, and you can subscribe if you liked it and want to see more. But for the meantime, whoever you are and wherever you are, I hope you're having a lovely morning, evening, day, afternoon, week, month, year. And I'll see you again in a few days.